to order, and we need a roll call vote. Angie?
Board members Wasserman,
Here.
Semidion,
Here.
Rocha,
Here.
Tucker,
Cap, you're muted.
Oh, here.
Velasco, Spring,
Here.
Martinez Beltran, Carmen,
Callahan, is that what you said? I'm here.
Carmen, sorry.
Oh.
Esparza,
Here.
Foley,
Here.
Raval,
Here.
Lazat,
Here, Lazat. Here.
Kalman,
Here.
Keegan.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. Next is a report from Mr. Glines, our Public Advisory Commission Chair. Is he here? Walt, are you here? I don't see him on my screen, Angie.
No, he's not on the attendees list either.
Okay, I've got 15 showing on my screen. Is that everybody?
That's all the board members, and then we have 2 attendees.
Wonderful. Okay, we'll now move to public comment for anyone to speak from the public that wishes to speak about anything not on today's agenda. Do we have any such? Our 2 attendees, maybe, Angie?
No.
Okay, so no public comment for the record. We'll now move on to joint governing and implementation board action as the consent agenda. Oh yeah, those are different. Okay, so our joint one, we've got regular business. Item number 1 is to approve the minutes. Wow, from the March 19th meeting. 6 months ago today, everybody, was the anniversary of the shelter in place. Yay, yay. Okay.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from
Me.
Renee Spring, and second was you, Kat?
Maya Esparza.
Maya.
Oh,
Maya Esparza. Angie, did you get both those?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. We have no one from the public wishing to speak on item number 1?
No.
Okay. I believe I've done this before with this board, if it's okay with all of you. And we simply say, is there any further discussion, first of all, on this item? Nope, hearing none. Then I would say, does anyone on either board wish to object to the motion to approve the minutes? Hearing none. Does anyone on either board wish to abstain from approving the minutes? Hearing none. For the record, the minutes are approved by unanimous consent. We now move on to item number 2, the Western Burrowing Owl Program Update.
Yes, this is Ed. Nice to see you
Ed?
all. How you guys all doing?
Ed.
Okay. Hey, Ed.
And we have Sandra here to give you an update on what on what we're doing with the Burrowing Owl program. So as you know, we're into tier 3 activities because the owls aren't doing so well. But we have some good news this year. So I'll hand it off to Sandra Menzel, one of the scientists working for us to try to recover the owls in the plant area.
Thanks
Welcome.
for the introduction, Ed. May I share the screen? Is that okay with everybody?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see here. Yes.
Warm and fuzzy pictures.
Okay, can everybody see this?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, let's see. So today's agenda for the presentation is a summary of the 2020 survey effort, a brief discussion about population trends and at the key nesting sites, and then I will talk a little bit about additional studies, and at the end about the captive breeding program that we are trying to get off the ground right now. We are starting with the summary of the survey. As every year, we are working with the South Bay Burrowing Owl Survey Network, and we surveyed at 5 breeding sites during the breeding season. One is the San Jose Santa Clara Regional Wastewater Facility, It's a long name, so we call it Alviso. If I say Alviso, that's what we mean. Shoreline Park, Moffett Field, San Jose Airport, and Warm Springs at the Don Edwards National Wildlife Refuge. As every year, this is a joint effort and lots of people are involved. Here's a list of all the agencies and organizations that are participating in these surveys. This breeding season, we had 35 adults that we observed, and they fledged a total of 66 young. This is a tiny uptick in the number of adults this year in comparison to last year. Overall, it's still a not so good year for our region. San Jose Airport had a small, and we have a graph later on, maybe I should wait with that and go over the numbers in particular. One stands out here, that's Warm Springs. We had no pairs, just like last year, which is disappointing. Here you can see the slight uptick in 2020 in the overall number of adult burrowing owls. At the Alviso site, we had fewer adults than last year. At Shoreline, we had significantly more. At the airport, we had a few more. Don Edwards, again, a slight downward trend and no pairs this year. And at Moffett Field, we had also fewer pairs this year. Here's a comparison between the years of 2014 to this year. As you can see, we had 2 more adults in comparison to last year and 20 more young in comparison to last year. This is mainly thanks to our effort of overwintering young in captivity, and I will talk a little bit more about that as well. Without that effort, our numbers would have been much lower than that. The survey coverage, we have not updated the 2019 maps, but it's very similar. We surveyed in area 1 and 2 up north and did not survey in area 3 and 4 in the South County. We surveyed at Warm Springs, Alviso, the Sunnyvale waste, disposal site, and the Baylands, and then at Moffett Field and Shoreline. And then in addition, we also surveyed at the airport, San Jose Airport. Study updates, as every year we did banding. Supplemental feeding is the 4th year that we have done this tier 3 activity. Overwintering juveniles in captivity is a new project, and I will discuss that more. And then again, we hope to start with the captive breeding program next year. Any questions so far? I'm just rattling on, but maybe I should take questions.
Yeah, any questions, members?
Yeah, if I may, so thank you. The numbers are still low compared to what they used to be. So with other species, we know if the numbers get too low, then eventually, you know, the genetic pool is becoming too small. Is that a concern here as well? And if so, how would you address that? Would you fly in burrowing owls from other areas?
That's a very good question. Yes, you're absolutely correct. As with every declining population, we already see some inbreeding because there are not that many owls. We had 2 sibling pairs this year. And in terms of importing birds, we have been discussing that and how we can increase genetic diversity And once we start with the captive breeding program, there might be opportunity to introduce genetic diversity by importing owls from other areas. Yeah, we are definitely discussing that, and it is a problem and will become a bigger problem as time goes on if the numbers stay this low, for sure.
So are the burrowing owls in our area, are they genetically the same as burrowing owls, I don't know, down in LA or in Nevada or some other state?
Our owls are somewhat distinct. The University at Colorado State has done a study where people applied blood samples that were analyzed, and it looks like that our owls are in fact distinct and probably interbreed more than some of the migratory populations, and they have seen similar results in San Diego, for example, where they are more isolated as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, but in general, there is a lot of intermixing of genes, and it shouldn't be a problem to introduce more gene flow again, which was the case previously at some point.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I will move on. Okay, so banding, Deborah Kromzak does most of our banding, and she banded 41 juveniles and she recited 26 bands, meaning previously banded owls were observed again, and we can observe movement of owls and who is mating with whom. Supplemental feeding, as I said earlier, it was our 4th year. It's really an important and successful activity. Early results, again, it's not that much data, but we show that the offspring at fed nests had significantly more offspring compared to non-fed nests. And so we want to continue that. We start feeding pairs as soon as they pair up, and then we feed all the way through the breeding season until the young fledge. This obviously helps them with sustenance, and hopefully also decreases some of the predation pressure, because they don't have to go out hunting so much and are not out and about as much. This is the overwintering of juvenile burrowing owls is an exciting new project that has been really successful during our 1st year of doing it. Last breeding season, we took 13 juveniles into captivity. The young have a very high mortality rate of 70 to 75%. They have a hard time surviving the first winter. Once they survive the first winter, they have a much better survival rate. So the idea of this head starting program, as it is also called, and we didn't come up with this, other organizations have done this before. The idea is that we keep the young in captivity, keep them safe, keep them fed, and then release them as pairs the next breeding season, so that they can then reproduce and again have survived that first winter. So we captured 13, put them into a facility at the Peninsula Humane Society, and they fed them and took care of them and made sure they were healthy and all that. So that was a good start for them. And then, so we had 13, as I said, 8 females, 5 males. So we had 5 pairs and 3 extra females in captivity for the winter. And then we released 3 females in February at the Alviso site. Soft releasing means that we don't just release them, but we put them into an aviary for a few weeks so that they can get used to the new location, to the sounds and sights around them. And we keep them fed, of course, and I have a photo later on too. And then we release them, and one of the females left the site right away. We never saw her again. And two remained on site and found mates. One of them only stayed around till late April and then abandoned her nest. We don't know why. And then the other one successfully produced 4 young. And then with the other 10 birds, we placed them as 5 breeding pairs into separate aviaries in March at Shoreline. And all 5 pairs produced eggs in the enclosure, and we waited until they had laid eggs, and then we removed the enclosure. All pairs remained on site, and a total of 23 young were produced by these 5 pairs. So that was really successful. We were glad to see that all of them stayed around. And yeah, this was our first year of doing it, and there's always room for improvement, but I think overall this was a very successful project. So we captured 13 juveniles this breeding season, and we'll repeat the whole process. We have 4 females and 9 males currently at the Peninsula Humane Society facility. So we only get 4 pairs this year, but we never know when we capture them what their sex is. So we are sort of stuck with whatever we capture in terms of the relationship between males and females.
Sandra, if I may, so the number 13, is that just coincidental, or is that the number you decide every year?
We are not supposed to get more than 15 just because of space within the facility. And 13 is what we yeah, it's coincidental, but we are allowed no more than 15, and they prefer 12, 13, fewer than 15, really, just because of feeding and space within the facility.
And there's no danger of them, I'm not sure if that's the right term, imprinting on humans if you catch them too early. Is that the right term?
It is the right term, and there's no danger. Raptors in general are very self-sufficient, and they don't imprint. They stay really wild in captivity. And when you release them, they are very instinctual about avoiding predators, finding prey. Personally, I always say that was my biggest disappointment, and we didn't have to put on burrowing owl suits because of the fear of imprinting, like they do with the sandhill cranes or the condors. It's a joke, of course, but no, they don't imprint. This is the aviary that I was talking about for soft release that we put up. It's 9 by 9 feet and about 5 to 6 feet tall. And we had either the 3 females in it or 1 pair per enclosure. Here you can see 2 owls, and as I said, I mean, immediately when a squirrel walked by, they were doing sort of a display, and when the raptor flew over, they were very alert and ducked into their tunnels. So the right behaviors were there right away, which was very good to see. At the end, we also fed them live mice, not just dead frozen mice, but live mice, and they actually, and crickets actually, they hunted them right away and were able to deal with them. Here's a little bit more about the genetic question that was brought up earlier. So we selected mates based on 2 criteria. One was genealogy. We analyzed the banding data, and then we also collected blood samples for genomic analysis, and that was done by the department at Colorado State University by the team of Kristen Wiig. And we have enough bending data. There's a little picture below the writing showing that we can follow some of the owls back several generations, how they are related and to whom, who the parents are, and so forth. And we definitely want to prevent inbreeding as much as possible. And the genomic analysis helped, in addition, to make sure that they are as genetically diverse as possible. For example, one of the nests, even though we knew who the parents were and how they were related to other birds, that female, the offspring was from 2 different males within one nest. And so there is even genetic diversity within one clutch of birds, which we wouldn't know by just looking at genealogy. For that, we really have to do the genetic analysis, the genomic analysis. Here you can see we can open up the nest chamber to see how far along in the egg laying process the birds are before we can remove the enclosures. And then we have young that are raised basically in the wild. They're cute.
Yes, they are.
So lastly, I want to talk briefly about the captive breeding program. Again, even with the captive overwintering, we are afraid that we will lose the opportunity to have genetically diverse birds for a captive breeding program. So now is the time to really get into this and produce more birds that we can release to the wild, and not only at current locations where we find birds currently, but we would also like to establish new colonies in South County where it's more open grasslands and not as built up as in the north. So this is conducted under Tier 3 conservation actions of the Habitat Plan. We have had calls with the agencies. In 2018, in preparation, we visited British Columbia and looked at several facilities there. They have been doing it for a few decades, breeding burrowing owls very successfully. And then last year, we went to San Diego Zoo Institute for Conservation Research and looked at their facility. They have currently 2 pairs in captive breeding. And they also have a second site where they have, I believe, 2 pairs as well the first year this year, which is the Living Coast Discovery Center in Chula Vista. So we have been in communication with all the various successful breeding locations to see how they are going about it and so forth. These are a few photos of San Diego Zoo. This is what they do. They breed birds, and we were pretty amazed about their facility and all the different birds that they're breeding. And again, since just a couple of years, they have also been trying to breed burrowing owls. Just a status report on this. So we submitted a proposal and scientific collecting permit applications to California Department of Fish and Wildlife. The first draft was submitted in April, and then they took quite a while to review it, and we had another phone call. And so then we submitted revisions in July, at the end of July. And as of last Friday, we received the federal raptor propagation permit. So that's awesome. We just got that done. Now we are just waiting for the state permits, and they seem to be a little slower about it. We are proposing to start with 2 breeding pairs next year, and we already have the birds that we would like to breed for the juvenile overwintering project, and we would just take 4 of those birds out of that program. And in February, we would then move those 4 birds to the Ohlone Humane Society Wildlife Rehab Center in Fremont, and that will be our breeding facility. And then the first release is anticipated in 2022 at a currently occupied site, probably Alviso. And then we will want to learn more about how to go properly about releasing birds before we move into a next phase, which would be starting up new colonies in the South County. And we have been in communications with OSA and Post about North Coyote Valley Conservation Area, and we are hoping to release birds there in 2023. That was that. Oh, yes, here is an example of one of the aviaries at our breeding facility, and we will amend it so that, you know, we can breed burrowing owls there. And you're probably all familiar with the North Coyote Valley Conservation Area, and we are specifically looking at Tulare Meadow, which is on the northern end, just south of Tulare Hill.
That's wonderful, Sandra. Thank you very much. Angie, do we have any members of the public that wish to speak about this item?
No, sir.
We don't. Any comments from committee members on either implementation or governing? Yes, I see. Meenakshi. You're muted. Some of you get very creative, you know.
Thank you so much for the report. It is interesting. And Sandra, I particularly have a question about one site that is.
Excuse me, if I can interrupt you, Meenakshi. Angie, can you restore my video? I sure can't.
Okay. Yeah.
There we go. Thank you very much. Please continue.
Of course. I had a question. This is a mitigation area for burrowing owl, mitigation restoration area. It's a place called America Center. It's north of 237 off of Gold Street Connector. I didn't see that site as part of the report or the location where this study has been done. But either you or Ed, do you all have any intelligence or any report on that site and the status of burrowing all along that area, which has been specifically earmarked for them facing pond A8 towards the bay?
Sandra, can you respond?
If I think of the same site that you're referring to, it's kind of elevated. It's developed and it was implemented as a, yeah, okay. We have not seen any burrowing owls there for a number of years, probably 5-6 years or more. Again, that area is very much under development even right now. They had installed artificial burrows in that area initially, but those are not maintained. And I don't think that the area gets a regular vegetation management and so forth. So yeah, we are not seeing any activity there. We have been surveying there until 2 years ago, and we will probably return at some point, but again, we have not seen activity there in a number of years.
Thank you.
Hearing that, what would should there be some changes that city could make as part of the implementation? Because I have also noticed in the ongoing mitigation compliance reports that I get that we don't find any presence, sign of burrowing owl. It's, as you said, at an office location, probably not maintained, has a lot of human activity around. So it seems like peddlings or burrowing owls are not really finding that location to be suitable to them. What would be the recommendation to make some changes to that if there is some lead? And it's not necessarily a formula, I'm just wondering top of my head because it's been something that I've been noticing from last 2-3 cycles.
Yeah, it's a tricky question. As you say, there's a lot of activity in that area. We have very few owls to begin with, and they are not choosing that site. If we had a surplus of owls, let's say, and you know, they would explore into new areas again, it may become and be still an attractive area if it was maintained correctly with short vegetation and mowing and so forth. I don't think, I don't remember if the site had many ground squirrels because again, the artificial burrows are probably not useful anymore and it would require ground squirrels. It is very close to the office buildings. And so again, there's a lot of disturbance and people walking and so forth. If at some point we have an expanding population, it would be wise to go back to the site and hopefully it could be maintained in a way that we can offer it up to burrowing owls once more. But at this point, it doesn't seem to be an especially suitable site just because it is so close to humans.
Thank you so much. I understand.
Sure, sure. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you very much. Any other members' questions? Chair Lazat, any questions?
No, I just wanted to say, nice presentation. You know, looks like you're working real hard to save a very threatened population here, and good luck with all of your captive breeding and everything that you're doing.
Thank you. We need
Thank you,
it.
son. Thank you. Very informational report. We don't need any action. It's only to receive. So we're good on that, and we have no members from the public to speak. We can move on to item number 3, which is a report from our executive officer, Mr. Ed Sullivan.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Wasserman. I will share a screen on the EO report. Let's see how this goes. Okay, I'll wait. There we go. Where are we? I think I'd get better at this at some point.
It's at the bottom of your screen, Ed. If you slide the cursor down, there will be a share screen, a green bottom.
Yeah, I'm hitting that, but for some reason the document's not coming up. I don't know why.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
Sure.
you. I don't know why it's not coming up. I have it here, but let me.
Did you just want your EO notes up?
Yeah. Let me try again. Nope.
I could bring them up for you. Just one second.
Thank you. Great. Thank you, Angie.
Mm-hmm.
Can you enlarge them a bit, Angie?
Yeah. That good?
One more. There you go. Thanks.
So, as you all know, probably all too well, of all the fires that we had, the large one in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and then the even larger one in the Diablo Range. Some county parks were impacted by the one in the Diablo Range. Henry Cove Park was significantly impacted. Early on, we thought that it was going to come up towards Coyote Ridge, and we were concerned about where CAL FIRE was going to do its last stand, because we had heard from OSA they were going to do it right on top of the serpentine soils in along Coyote Ridge. And we have 2 properties there that we own or have an easement over. So we were hoping, expecting the worst, hoping for the best, and the best happened. The fires stayed to the east, they moved to the south. CAL FIRE made their last stand and kept the fires from not getting to 152. We also have some properties down there that were also spared. Though Grant Park did suffer from the fires, the restoration project that we did in San Felipe Creek in the meadow was spared. So the issue there would have been the loss of all the infrastructure that's been put in, all the irrigation infrastructure. So it's safe to say we dodged a bullet. For the endowment investment, we have to date invested almost 2.9 million. And as of September 9th, that's the point I checked before I submitted these EO notes to Angie. We had basically $3,151,000. So we're in the black with the endowment investment date. For advocacy, no surprise here. COVID-19 forced the legislature to take multiple breaks, which ultimately shortened and restricted the legislative calendar. Because of this, the Assembly and Senate were encouraged to limit their bills to urgent bills or bills related to emergency response. This was certainly an unprecedented year, and conservation issues, unfortunately, got lost in the chaos. Could you move it down, Angie?
And yet, Edmund, all of us kept working.
Yes, exactly. All
Also
the
gave
bills.
you control, so you would be able to control it yourself.
Okay. Oh, I can control it? Okay.
Yes.
Great. Excellent. All right. So all the bills we were tracking and advocating for either got dropped by authors because they didn't meet the urgency requirement this year or failed to pass out of committee. So the bonds, we're hearing that 2022, some of those climate sustainability bonds that I've been updating you with, Garcia and Atkins and Mullen, are looking like they could possibly be placed on the ballot in 2022. So we'll be watching those and advocating for line items for NCCPs and restoration. The Great American Outdoor Act, which was supported as a bipartisan bill. Not a lot of those right now in Washington, unfortunately, but this was one of them. The president signed it. And why is this significant? It's now law. Land and Water Conservation Fund will now automatically fund the Section 6 program, meaning we do not need annual appropriations, which was always quite a lift for our partners across the country and the state to advocate for funding through the appropriations process. We still need to make sure there's enough money put into the Section 6 program and there's enough money for Fish and Wildlife staffing, but at least we don't have to go through this annual hamster wheel of fighting to just get it in through the appropriations process. So that was a big deal. Land acquisition update. We closed on what we call East Coyote Ridge. It was an additional 1,526 acres of property owned by UTC. We closed escrow in July 24th. Tilton, where all the funding is now in place. The last little piece was OSA going to their board on yesterday, or was it yesterday? No, last Thursday, excuse me. And their board approved the funding. It was just a formality, but they still have to go through that step. The county is going to discuss this at the county board meeting next week. And we're expecting the county board to approve their funding. So this is a great win for all the conservation partners in the region. It's critical habitat for a lot of our important species. And we're expecting to close escrow at the end of September. Calero Park enrollment into the reserve system, conservation easement and management plan has been submitted to the wildlife agencies, and they are currently reviewing the packet. This was another momentous, it took us a long time to get to this point, and I want to thank Don Rocha and Lizanne Reynolds for helping to get this done and submitted. Yes, exactly. Councilman Cook, I don't know what to say about this one. I keep it here. They've told us twice they want to sell it to us. Twice we've submitted them purchase sale agreement, and twice it just gets lost in their corporate bureaucracy. So I don't know. At some point, that's up on Coyote Ridge. We have 4 other properties at various stages in the acquisition process, and hopefully I'll be reporting to you in the coming months that these are going to happen also. Thank you.
Is that thank you the end?
Yes, thank you is the end. Yep.
Thank you the end. Do we have any members of the public, Angie, wishing to speak on item number 3?
No.
We do not. Committee members, any questions for our executive director at this time? Seeing none, without objection, we'll consider the report received. We now move on to items 4, 5, and 6 in the governing board, in the agenda. This is governing board only. It's 3 items under consent. Angie, do we have any speakers for items 4, 5, or 6 today?
No, sir.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions or a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to move approval of the consent calendar as contained in our published agenda. For the record, this is Supervisor Semidian.
Thank you, Supervisor.
I'll second. This is
And we
Maya
have
Esparza.
second
I'll
from
second.
Maya. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, does anyone wish to vote no to the current motion, which is to approve the consent agenda? Hearing none, does anyone wish to abstain from approving the consent agenda? Hearing none, Angie, items 4, 5, and 6 on the consent have been passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Do any committee members on the governing board wish to suggest anything for future agenda items for the governing board? Seeing and hearing none, that will be the governing board adjournment, and I turn it over to Chair Lazat for implementation board.
Thank you, Dr. Wasserman. All right, item number 7 is on the consent agenda, Pajaro River Agricultural Preserve Restoration Project Agreement with Triangle Properties / ICF team. It's a consent item. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Wasserman.
Second.
Who moved? Renee? We're done.
I love it.
Did? All right. If there's anyone who wishes to oppose this item, please say so. Seeing none. Does anyone wish to abstain from this item? Seeing or hearing none. There's a motion and a second to approve item number 7. That motion passes unanimously. Moving on, future.
For clarification, I'm sorry. Can you tell me who the second was on that one?
Mike.
Wasserman.
Thank you.
Sorry, Angie. All right.
Sorry, I should have done this. I'm sorry.
Second. There you go. There you go. Future implementation board initiated agenda items. Does anyone have anything they wish to place on implementation board agenda? Seeing and hearing none, we will move on to closed session. At this point is an opportunity for public to comment on the closed session agenda item, which is executive officer compensation. Angie, do we have any member of the public who wishes to speak to us?
No, ma'am.
All right. With that, we will adjourn to closed session, fellow board members. It is a separate Zoom invite, and I have asked Ed to join us in the meeting. so that he can give us a brief summary of his accomplishments before we deliberate on the subject. So we're adjourning to closed session, executive officer compensation under authority of Government Code Section 54957B, employee performance evaluation, executive officer. See you all in the other chat room.
Madam Lazat?
Yes,
Sure.
so come again, Mr.
Yes,
Watkins.
as far as us moving, hi, Kat. As far as us moving to that separate group, do we go back onto our calendars? Is there a separate link? How is that done?
Yes, Angie sent us all a separate link for closed session.
Before we head out, I want to thank everybody. I appreciate all the members of the Governing and Implementation Board. I am moving out of City of San Jose's position, and this will be my last meeting.
Oh, thank you for letting us know.
Wishes.
Thank you for your service. But are you staying with the city?
No.
You're leaving.
Good luck to you.
You're leaving the city of San Jose?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Linda.
Are you leaving the city of San Jose or just this position?
I am leaving the City of San Jose, and I have already let the management know. They will appoint or nominate another planner from the team to the board. I'm sure that person will be attending future meetings. I will miss you all.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Best wishes.
Best
Thank you.
wishes, yes.
Thank you. I'll see you all in another room.
If you don't have the other, let Angie know and she can send it to you again.
Okay.
Here you go.
Bye-bye.